Okay, hello Year 7. So this class is your England revision lesson. So we're going to be looking at William's England, Norman England, and then trying to remember some key facts about those three topics that we've previously studied. So this is really important for your assessment. So your title would be Norman England revision lesson. Your learning outcomes: explain the feudal system and why it was used, explain the advantages of the Doomsday Book, and evaluate how William used castles. So this is really important. So if you can write down your learning outcomes and the title. If you want to put the video on pause, I'll just give everyone a minute to do that, and then we'll get straight into it. Alright, okay, so for the starter, we're going to look at three facts about each of our previous topics: the feudal system, the Doomsday Book, and castles. So if you want to do this any way you want, it doesn't have to be a spider diagram. You can bullet point them if you think that's easier to remember. Just try and think of three facts for each topic. So if you can pop the video on pause, I'll let you get on with that. Okay, so let's think about some facts about the feudal system. Now these are just some of the ones that I have thought of. I'm sure that you had plenty of different ones, but the three that I could think of is: the king owns all the land. He is at the top of the feudal system. The peasants are at the bottom of the feudal system, and then your nobles are second, your knights are third. So if you want the order of that feudal system, really important you remember this Year 7, it would be king, nobles, knights, peasants. And that is such an important thing to remember, that we know the king was in charge, he gave land to his Norman nobles, the Norman nobles gave land to the knights, and then the knights offered protection to the peasants. Really important to remember those facts. For the Doomsday Book, you can have things like it was written in 1086 or 85. We don't really know the exact date, but 86 is probably the most important one to remember. You can have that it helped William discover what people owned in England, and then you can have, if people lied, they would be killed, because William needed true information to help him discover what he had conquered. For castles, and this one's probably the easiest, you can have that the wooden castle was called a motte and bailey. You also had stone keep castles, which were made of stone. So motte and bailey castles were quite easy to attack because the wood could rot or be set on fire. Stone keep castles had features like Barbican Gatehouse, arrow slits, murder holes. Really important to remember those three features of a stone keep. The motte and bailey did not have them, but stone keeps did. So there, we've done our starter, so we can move on. So just going to read through some information for you on the feudal system. So the feudal system was a hierarchy used by William to control the whole of England after winning the Battle of Hastings in 1066. It was named after the Christian Judgment Day, really important fact to remember. William owned all of the land, and he would then hand out 80% of the land to his trusted allies, while keeping 20% of the land for his personal use. And remember, his trusted allies, they're your nobles. The feudal system allowed William to control England, because if anyone stepped out of line, he could take away their land, hand it to someone else he trusted. So if a noble is starting to get a bit uppity with William, trying to remove William, he can just take away their land, give it to someone that he can trust, and the problem is gone. Very, very important. People lower in the hierarchy were also rewarded in the feudal system, as everyone had a role to play. And I think that's a really good point, and it leads us into our first task, where we're going to do a fill in the blanks of the feudal system. So you can see at the bottom the word bank there, and which one's going to fit in all these gaps. We have king, fief, knights, nobles, protection. So I'm just going to give you Year 7, if you want to put the video on pause, try and fill this in, and then we'll go through the answers together, and I will read through it with the blanks filled in. Okay, so hopefully we've managed to fill in this word, this paragraph. So I'm going to run through it now. How did the feudal system work? The king made his loyal supporters, and for this one we should have nobles. So the king made his loyal supporters nobles and gave them land. This land was called a fief. In return, the nobles had to swear loyalty to the king and provide knights for the army. The barons were given too much land and gave some to their knights. The knights promised to serve the king on behalf of the nobles. The knights were not farmers, so they let peasants live on their land. They offered them protection. The peasants farmed the land for the knights and paid them to live there. So I hope you got all the answers to that year 7. This is a really nice summary of what the feudal system did, and I think it's a really good revision tool because we have all 4 of the different groups in there and we have what they did in this system. So moving away from the feudal system, we're going to look at the Doomsday Book. So I'd like you to write down first what the Doomsday Book was. So if you want to put the video on pause and have a think, and then just write down a sentence telling me what the Doomsday Book was. Okay, so hopefully you had something like the Doomsday Book was a book that helped William to know what was in England, and that's what we're going to be looking at now. We're going to look at this source, and the source is the Land of Roger of Bully bit, and then we're going to write down what William would be interested in knowing from this source. And then once you've done that, I would like you to explain why William would be interested. So what does he gain from knowing certain things? So again, if you want to put the video on pause, year 7, try and pick out a few little bits in that source that you think William would be interested in knowing and why. Okay, so I'm just going to point out some things that I think he would be interested in knowing. If you have something else, as long as you can explain why, I think that's perfectly fine. Because let's be honest, pretty much everything there William would like to know because he's asked for it. It's all about explaining the reasons. So the first one I've got is the value of the land in 1086. I think he'd be really interested in knowing that it's worth £2 in 1086. Well, obviously the question is why? Because he needs to know how much he can tax the land of Roger of Bully. If he's taxing them £5 for the year, it's too much and they can't pay it. So he needs to level. Maybe he can tax them a bit lower than that. Maybe it'll be £1 a year so they can pay it every year. Really important that he knows this because, as we know, the Doomsday Book is looking at how much William can tax. It's also looking at land because let's remember, all of the land in England belongs to William. He's not looking to buy this land from Roger of Bully. He can just take it if he wants it because it's his. So that's why the land section is quite detailed and goes into how much is there specifically. And I think this is a really important thing that William would want to know because he needs land. You know, if he wants more meadow for horses or farms, he knows where it is and he can just take it from Roger of Bully. So it'd be really interesting to see some of the things that you thought of, but these are the 2 that I thought were important. Okay, moving on. Bit of an activity on castles now, and the choice is going to come down to you. So you're going to pick 1 to complete. So there are 3 here. You only need to do 1, year 7. Don't do all 3. If you want to do all 3, you can, but it might take you a bit of time, and you don't have to. So I'm going to read through each of these tasks and then kind of explain what you have to do from it. So number 1, you have been put in charge of a Motte and Bailey castle. A group of angry Anglo-Saxon peasants are trying to destroy the castle. You need to make a list of the weaknesses of the castle and suggest ways to improve it. Number 2, you are trying to convince William that Motte and Bailey castles are ineffective and he should build stone keep castles. You need to write about the positives of the stone keep and the negatives of the Motte and Bailey to convince him. Number 3, you are William I, and if you don't know Year 7, William I is William, Duke of Normandy. You are trying to convince people that the Motte and Bailey castle is effective. Write a letter to your nobles explaining the positives of the Motte and Bailey castle. So let's just go through each of these so everyone is certain of what they have to do. So if you're choosing number 1, you need to make a list of weaknesses of the Motte and Bailey castle, but you also need to think, how can I improve those weaknesses? That's a really important detail there. It's not just enough to list 10 weaknesses, you need to think of ways that you could improve it. For the second one, you need to talk about the positives of a stone keep castle and then the negatives of the Motte and Bailey. So thinking about those two castles, why stone keep is really good, why Motte and Bailey is really bad, and you need to try and convince William stone keeps are the way forward. And then number 3, you need to actually say why Motte and Bailey's were good. What are the positives of the Motte and Bailey castle? There are positives as well. Remember doing that castle lessons, there were certainly things there that were positive. So yes, and if you want to put the video on pause, once you've finished that, I'll just go through some weaknesses and some positives we could have talked about, and hopefully we come up with something a little bit similar. So if you want to put the video on pause, Year 7, and you can do that. Alright, so let's just get straight into it. So if we're making a list of weaknesses of the Motte and Bailey, there are 3 big ones I think we can think of. It's made of wood, and wood can rot. And I think that's a really important one. If it rains, the wood's going to rot. It's a lot easier to knock down. There's also the fact that wood can be set on fire. While it didn't happen all that often, it could still happen. And then there's the third one. If you remember, the motte is that big hill with the tower on top. It would be quite easy to sneak attack by creeping up behind that big motte and then going into the tower. So easy to sneak attack. The wood will rot, making it easy to knock down, and it can also be set on fire. Those are 3 reasons I think we can all agree on are weaknesses. If we're looking at positives of the stone keep, again, let's go back to our features. It has a Barbican gatehouse. This is a big stone kind of building that counts as the entrance. They have murder holes, so if someone's trying to break in, you can pour hot burning liquid down onto them. Arrow slits in the walls to stop people sneak attacking. They have stone walls, which are very strong defensively. They're still built in the same location as the Motte and Bailey, so it's an effective location. And then again, the negatives of the Motte and Bailey, we're looking back at, walls made of wood, perhaps not that strong defensively, easy to sneak attack, anything like that. Positives of the Motte and Bailey, and again, you're William I in this task, so your positives are going to be things like it's cheap, it's quick to build, and if it's knocked down, they can put it back up again quite easily. Anything like that would work as an example. So I hope you enjoyed that task a little bit, Year 7. Again, we're trying to give you, the impetus to go and do what you want out of a few tasks. We're not always trying to limit you. You can be creative with these kind of things. And last, your plenary. You need to decide which of these was the most important for William. So write a short PEE paragraph explaining which of these 3 things you think is the most important for William trying to control England. So do you think the most important for William was the feudal system, the Doomsday Book, or castles? Any one of those answers is fine. There's no correct answer. This is your opinion, Year 7. I really want to stress that. It's your opinion. There's no right or wrong answer. All you have to do is give me one reason and then explain to me why. I've also given us some sentence starters, so they kind of increase in how complex they are. So you could say, I think blank is the most important because, and then give me your reason. Blank was the most important for William because, give me your reason. And then this last one, if you're really trying to aim for that A grade in any answer you give, when William conquered England, he used 3 different ways to control England. The most important way was blank because, and then you need to explain your reason. So yes, and if you want to put the video on pause, or if you want to end the video now because this is the final slide and then complete that, that's fine with me. Thank you for this year 7. I hope you all do well in your assessments, and trust me, we have covered everything. There shouldn't be anything that surprises you with it. Most of it will be multiple choice, so you can kind of look through and think about the answer that way. And I really must stress, please revise, please look at your castles, your Doomsday Book and your Feudal System. It will be really helpful for you in completing that assessment next week. Well, thank you for your time, Year 7. That is the end of this recording. I hope to see you next time, and I will see you again.